I gave her everything. $400,000, my entire retirement, my future. She was 24. I was 62. I thought age didn't matter when love was real. But love wasn't what she felt, and I was too blind to see it. By the time I understood, I had nothing left. No savings, no dignity, just a one-way ticket home and a broken man staring back at me in the mirror. I hadn't planned on revisiting that darkness today. Honestly, I've spent the last few years trying to bury that version of myself. But late last night, a notification popped up on my screen. It was an email from a viewer named Michael. Michael isn't new here. He's been following the channel, quietly watching from the sidelines. But this time, he felt compelled to reach out and share his own story. As I sat there in the quiet of my office reading his words, I felt the air leave the room. It wasn't just a message, it was a mirror. My hands actually started shaking as I scrolled down. I felt this sharp, visceral ache in my chest, a mix of profound sadness for him and a terrifying familiarity. It brought the memories rushing back, not as a distant nightmare, but as if I were living through that betrayal all over again right now. I realized that keeping my story hidden wasn't protecting me. It was keeping me from helping guys like Michael. That's why we're here. We are building a space where we can talk about the hard truths without judgment. If you appreciate that kind of honesty, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I'd also love to know who I'm talking to tonight. Drop a comment and let me know where in the world you're watching from. And before I dive in, I need to say a massive, heartfelt thank you to everyone watching, but especially to those of you who keep coming back, video after video. You guys are the heartbeat of this channel. Your support gave me my voice back when I thought I'd lost it forever. Let me take you back to where it all started. I saw her on my second week in Phuket. The beach bar was half empty that afternoon, just a few tourists scattered around, nursing their drinks under the ceiling fans. The heat was thick, humid, the kind that makes your shirt stick to your back. I was sitting alone at the counter when she walked in, 24 years old, long dark hair that caught the light, a smile that could stop your heart. She wore a simple white dress, nothing fancy, but on her, it looked like something from a magazine. She sat 2 stools down from me and ordered a coconut water in Thai. Her voice was soft, musical. I tried not to stare, but I couldn't help myself. She caught me looking and smiled. Not the polite smile you give strangers. Something warmer. Something that made my chest tighten. I was 62 years old, 3 years divorced, living off my pension in a rented apartment back in Brisbane. I'd come to Thailand because everyone said it was cheap, beautiful, a place where a man like me could start over, where the weather was warm and the people were friendly, and maybe, just maybe, I could stop feeling so damn old. I didn't expect to feel anything, not anymore. Not after my wife left me for her personal trainer. Not after my kids stopped returning my calls because I reminded them too much of the divorce. Not after 3 years of eating dinner alone and going to bed in an empty house. But when she smiled at me, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. She spoke first. Her English was good, not perfect, but good enough. Better than my Thai, which was non-existent. "You here alone?" she asked. Her eyes were kind, curious, not judgmental. I nodded, took a sip of my beer. "Yeah, just me." "First time Thailand?" "Second week," I said, still figuring it out. She smiled again, wider this time. "You like?" I shrugged. "It's different. Trying to figure out if this is a place I could live. You know, long term." She nodded slowly, thoughtfully. "Most Farang come here to run away from something," she said. There was no accusation in her voice, just observation. "What you running from?" I should have lied. Should have said nothing. Should have kept my walls up like I'd done with everyone else since the divorce. But something about her made me honest, made me want to tell the truth. "A marriage that ended badly," I told her. A life that didn't turn out the way I thought it would. Kids who don't need me anymore. A job I retired from that I miss more than I thought I would. She listened, really listened. Her eyes never left mine. That's a lot to run from, she said quietly. Yeah, I guess it is. She extended her hand across the empty stool between us. I'm Ratree. Her skin was soft, warm. I held it a second longer than I should have. Philip, I said. Nice to meet you, Philip. The way she said my name, with that slight accent, the way the L's sounded softer, it made me feel like someone new, someone who wasn't just a divorced retiree drinking alone in a foreign country. We talked for 2 hours, maybe more. I lost track of time. She told me she was from Chiang Mai, that she'd come to Phuket 6 months ago to work at one of the big resorts, housekeeping, long hours, bad pay, rude tourists who left messes and never tipped. She hated it, but she needed the money. For what? I asked. She looked down at her coconut water, traced the rim of the glass with her finger. My family, they depend on me. My mother works in the rice fields. My brother and sister are still in school. My grandmother is sick, very sick. I send them money every month. It's why I'm here. I could hear the weight in her voice, the responsibility, the burden of being the oldest, the one everyone counted on. I knew that feeling. I'd been that person once, before everything fell apart. That must be hard, I said. She shrugged, smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. It's life. What can I do? I told her about Australia, about my ex-wife who left me after 32 years of marriage, about my daughter who lived in Sydney and only called on birthdays, about my son who moved to London and rarely answered my texts, about the warehouse job I'd worked for 40 years, the pension I'd earned, the empty house I'd sold because I couldn't stand being in it anymore. She listened to all of it, never interrupted, never checked her phone, never looked away. When I finished, she reached across and touched my hand, just for a second. I'm sorry, she said. That sounds very lonely. I felt my throat tighten. Yeah, it is. When the sun started to set, she asked if I wanted to walk on the beach. I paid for both our drinks. She protested, but I insisted. It's nothing, I said. My pleasure. We walked for miles. The sand was warm under my feet, still holding the heat from the day. The ocean stretched out forever, dark blue turning to gold where the sun hit it. She took off her sandals and carried them. I did the same. Our feet left prints in the wet sand, side by side. She talked more about her family. Her mother who was 53 but looked 70. Her brother who was 17 and wanted to go to university but they couldn't afford it. Her sister who was 12 and loved to draw. Her grandmother who raised her after her father left, who was dying of something the doctors couldn't fix without money they didn't have. I listened to every word, felt the weight of each one. I wanted to help, to fix it, to be someone who mattered again. When we stopped walking, we were far from the bar. The beach was empty except for us. She turned to me and smiled, the real smile this time, the one that reached her eyes. You're different, she said. Different how? Most Farang just want one thing. They see Thai girl and they think they know what she wants, what she is. But you're kind. You listen. You treat me like a person. I felt my face flush, felt like a teenager on a first date. That's just basic decency. Not here it isn't, she said. We stood there for a moment. The waves crashed behind us. The sun was almost gone, just a sliver of orange on the horizon. Can I see you tomorrow? I asked. My voice sounded nervous, hopeful, desperate. She nodded. I'd like that. What time do you finish work? 4, but I can meet you after, maybe 6. Perfect, I said. I'll be at the bar, same place. She smiled, touched my arm. Thank you for today, Philip. I haven't felt this happy in a long time. We saw each other every day after that. She'd finish work and meet me, sometimes at the bar, sometimes at my villa, sometimes we'd just walk. She showed me the real Phuket, not the tourist traps on Bangla Road with the loud music and the drunk Australians. The local markets where vendors sold mangoes and dragon fruit and tiny fish dried in the sun. The hidden beaches where locals went. The street food stalls where old women cooked pad thai in giant woks over open flames. Everything cost 20 baht, less than $1. She held my hand when we walked, rested her head on my shoulder when we sat by the water watching the boats. She made me feel young, made me feel like maybe the best part of my life wasn't over, like maybe I still had something to offer. One night, maybe 2 weeks after we met, we sat on a beach under the stars, the kind of stars you can't see in the city, thousands of them. She was quiet for a long time, just staring up at the sky. Then she looked at me. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Do you think age matters?" I knew what she was asking. I'd been thinking about it since the day we met. The 38-year gap between us. The gray in my hair, the wrinkles around my eyes. The way my knees hurt when I stood up too fast. "No," I said. "Not if the feelings are real." "Do you think people will judge us?" "Probably," I said honestly. "Does that bother you?" She was quiet for a moment. "I don't care what people think. I just care what you think." "I think you're the best thing that's happened to me in years," I said. She smiled, leaned in, kissed me, soft at first, tentative, then deeper. I felt like I was falling, like I'd stepped off a cliff and didn't care where I landed. I should have been more careful, should have seen the warning signs, should have asked myself why a beautiful 24-year-old woman would want anything to do with a 62-year-old divorced Australian. But I didn't. I was too busy feeling alive. 2 weeks after we met, Ratree asked if I wanted to meet her family. Not in person. They were in Chiang Mai, 600 kilometers north. Too far to drive, but over video call. She asked me over breakfast. We were sitting on the terrace of my villa. She'd made omelets, strong Thai coffee. The morning sun was bright, hot already. "My mother wants to meet you," she said. She wasn't looking at me, just stirring her coffee, round and round. "She does?" I told her about you, about us. She's curious. I felt my stomach flip, nervous, excited, terrified. I was 62 years old, and I felt like a kid meeting his girlfriend's parents for the first time. "When?" I asked. "Today, maybe this afternoon if you want." "Of course I want," I said. I was nervous, more nervous than I wanted to admit. I'd never been introduced to anyone's family before, not like this. Not with the implication that I mattered, that I was part of her future, that this might be permanent. She set up her phone on the table at my villa that afternoon, propped it up against a water bottle. The screen flickered, loading. Then I saw them. Her mother appeared first, older than I expected. 50s maybe, but she looked older. Tired eyes, deep lines around her mouth, rough hands that spoke of decades of manual labor, a face that had seen too much sun and too much work. She wore a simple shirt, faded blue. Her hair was pulled back tight. She smiled when she saw Ratree, said something in Thai, fast, emotional. Then her younger brother appeared, 17 maybe, thin, too thin, wearing a faded Manchester United shirt. He looked at the camera with suspicious eyes, the eyes of someone who'd been disappointed before. Her sister came next. Couldn't have been more than 12, shy, hiding behind her mother's shoulder. She had the same eyes as Ratree, wide, dark, beautiful. And in the background, barely visible, her grandmother, frail, lying in a bed, a thin blanket pulled up to her chin, barely moving, just her eyes, watching. Ratree spoke to them in Thai, fast, excited, pointing at me, laughing. Her whole face lit up in a way I'd never seen before. Then she turned to me, switched to English. "My mother says thank you for making me happy," she said. Her voice cracked a little. "She says I smile more now, that I sound different when I talk, lighter." I didn't know what to say. My throat felt tight. I just nodded, waved at the screen like an idiot, smiled, tried to look friendly, non-threatening, like someone worthy of their daughter. Ratree's mother spoke again, more Thai. She was looking directly at the camera now, at me. Her face was serious, the smile gone. Ratree hesitated before translating. "She's asking if you're serious," Ratree said quietly. "About me, about us." I looked at Ratree, at the hope in her eyes, at the fear that I might say no, that this was all just a vacation fling, just another lonely farang passing time. "Yes," I said, looking at the screen, at her mother. "I'm very serious," Ratree translated. Her mother's face softened. She smiled, nodded, said something else, something longer this time. Ratree translated again. "She says she can see I'm happy, that's all she wants. For me to be happy. She says life has been hard for us, but maybe things are changing now." I felt the weight of those words, the responsibility, the expectations, but I also felt something else. Pride, purpose, like I was being trusted with something precious. After the call ended, Ratree was quiet. She sat on the couch, staring at her hands, twisting her fingers together. I could see her mind working. Something was bothering her. "What's wrong?" I asked. She shook her head. "Nothing." "Ratree, I can see something's wrong." She looked up at me, eyes wet, red around the edges. "My grandmother is sick," she said, "very sick." "Did you see her? In the bed?" I nodded. "Yeah, I saw her. She raised me, after my father left. She's the one who taught me English, who told me I could be more than just a farmer, who believed in me." Her voice broke. She covered her face with her hands. I sat next to her, put my arm around her shoulders, felt her body shake. "What does she need?" I asked. She looked at me through her fingers. "Medicine? Surgery, maybe? The doctors say her heart is weak. She needs tests, treatment, maybe an operation, but we don't have money." I felt my chest tighten, felt the weight of what she wasn't saying, the hope she was trying not to show. "How much?" I asked. She hesitated, pulled away slightly. "I can't ask you for that." "You're not asking." "I'm asking. How much?" She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. $2,000, American dollars. "It's too much, I know. It's not fair to even tell you. I'm sorry." $2,000. I did the math quickly in my head. About 3,000 Australian. It was a lot. More than I'd planned to spend. More than I should spend. But I had it. Barely. But I had it. And the way she looked at me, like I was the only one who could help. Like I was her hero. Like I was the difference between life and death for the woman who raised her. How could I say no? "I'll send it," I said. Her eyes went wide. "No, Philip, I can't let you do that." "Yes, you can," I said. "Let me help." "It's too much money." "It's not too much. Not for this. Not for your grandmother." She started crying, really crying, grabbed me, held me so tight I could barely breathe, her face buried in my neck. I could feel her tears on my skin, warm, real. "You're saving her life," she whispered. "You're saving all of us." I transferred the money the next morning. I had to go to the bank in person. The teller looked at me like she'd seen this before. Middle-aged farang, young Thai girlfriend, large wire transfer. She didn't say anything, just processed it, asked me to sign, handed me the receipt. I walked back to the villa feeling good, feeling like I'd done something important. Ratree called her mother right after I told her the money went through. I could hear the screaming on the other end, happy screaming, crying, gratitude, words I couldn't understand but could feel in my chest. When she hung up, she kissed me, long and deep, climbed into my lap, held my face in her hands. "I'll never forget this," she said. "Never. You're the best man I've ever known." That night we went out to celebrate. A nice restaurant, not the street food stalls, a real place with tablecloths and menus. She ordered for both of us. Things I'd never tried, foods with names I couldn't pronounce. She was radiant, glowing, happy. She held my hand across the table, looked at me like I was the only person in the world. I felt good, proud, like I'd done something that mattered, like I was someone who mattered. But late that night, lying in bed next to her, listening to her breathe, I couldn't sleep. A thought kept creeping in, a question I didn't want to ask myself. Would she still be here if I hadn't sent the money? Would she have stayed? Would we be lying here right now if I was just a regular guy? Just another tourist with no savings and no way to help? I pushed it away, told myself I was being paranoid, cynical, mean, that this was real, that she loved me, not my money, that the money was just a coincidence, a way for me to help someone I cared about. But the question didn't go away. It just got quieter, pushed down into a place where I didn't have to look at it, waiting. Ratree moved into my villa 2 months after we met. It made sense. She was paying rent on a tiny room near the resort. Room, shared bathroom, walls so thin she could hear everything. No kitchen, no privacy, just a bed and a closet, and a fan that barely worked. I had space, 3 bedrooms, a pool, a kitchen with actual appliances, a terrace that looked out over the palm trees. "Move in with me," I said one morning. She looked at me like I was joking. "What?" "Move in. Why are you paying for that room when you're here every night anyway?" She hesitated, bit her lip. "That's a big step." "We've already taken big steps," I said. "This just makes sense." "What if you get tired of me?" "I won't. You don't know that. Ratree, I want you here every day. Move in." She smiled, that real smile, the one that made me feel like I'd won something. Okay. She moved in that weekend. She brought 1 suitcase. That was it. Everything she owned fit into 1 bag. Some clothes, a few photos, a small Buddha statue her grandmother gave her. Nothing else. It broke my heart a little. Made me want to give her more. To fill her life with things she'd never had, things she deserved. She settled in quickly, made the villa feel like a home instead of a rental. She rearranged the furniture, put flowers in vases, hung curtains, cooked every night. Thai food mostly, spicy curries that made my eyes water, stir-fried vegetables with garlic and chilies, sticky rice that she'd make in the morning and leave in a pot for the day, som tam with dried shrimp and lime. Everything tasted better than the restaurants. She cleaned the villa without me asking, did my laundry, kept everything organized, took care of me in ways my ex-wife never did. It felt like a partnership, like we were building something together, something real, something permanent. But then the requests started, small at first, easy to say yes to. One night, about 3 weeks after she moved in, she was on the phone with her mother, talking in Thai, fast, worried. When she hung up, she looked stressed, scared even. "What's wrong?" I asked. She shook her head. "Nothing, just family stuff." "Tell me." She sat down next to me, took my hand. "My brother. He had to drop out of school. They can't afford the fees anymore." "How much does he need?" $1,500, but it's okay. We'll figure it out. Maybe he can work for a year and go back later." I could hear the resignation in her voice, the acceptance, like this was just how life was, like her family was destined to stay poor. "I'll send it," I said. She pulled back. "No, Philip, you already did so much. I can't keep asking." "You're not asking, I'm offering. It's too much." "It's not too much. Education is important. Let me help your brother." She started crying, not loud, just tears running down her cheeks, silent. Are you sure? I'm sure. I transferred the money the next day, $1,500. It felt good, like I was investing in someone's future, like I was making a real difference. Her brother sent me a message on Facebook a week later, in English, thanking me, promising to work hard, to make me proud. It made me feel like a father, like I was part of something bigger than myself. But then it kept coming. A week later, Ratree told me her mother's roof was leaking, $3,000 to fix it. The rainy season is coming, she said. If we don't fix it now, the whole house could flood. Everything they own could be ruined. I sent the money. Then it was her cousin's wedding, $800 for a gift. It's tradition, she explained. If we don't give enough, my family will lose face. People will talk. I sent the money. Her sister needed a new school uniform, $200. Her grandmother needed more medicine, $1,000. Her mother needed dental work, $1,200. Her brother needed a laptop for university, $900. The list kept growing. Every week something new. Every time Ratree cried, thanked me, told me I was the best thing that ever happened to her family, that they prayed for me every night, that they were so grateful. And I believed her. I wanted to believe her. But I started noticing things, small things, the pattern, the timing. She was warm after I sent money, loving, affectionate. We'd have sex. She'd laugh at my jokes, hold my hand, call me handsome, tell me she was lucky. But a few days later, she'd grow distant, cold. She'd spend more time on her phone, less time with me. She'd go to bed early, sleep on her side of the bed, turn away when I tried to touch her. And then another request would come, another emergency, another crisis. And after I sent the money, she'd be warm again. The cycle repeated, over and over. I tried to talk to her about it one night. We were sitting by the pool. She was on her phone, always on her phone. Ratree, I said. Yeah? She didn't look up. How much more do you think your family will need? She looked up then. Her face changed. Defensive. What do you mean? I mean, I've sent a lot of money. I'm happy to help. But I need to know if there's an end to this. An end? She stood up. You think I'm using you? I didn't say that. That's what you're saying. I'm just asking a question. My family is struggling, Philip. I'm sorry if that's inconvenient for you. I didn't say it was inconvenient. Then what are you saying? I backed down. I always back down. Nothing. Forget it. I'm sorry. She stayed mad for the rest of the night, slept in the guest room, didn't come out until morning. And when she did, she acted like nothing happened, made me breakfast, kissed my forehead, smiled, but I could feel the warning. Don't ask questions. Don't push. Don't make this difficult. Just send the money and everything will be fine. One night, I suggested we take a trip together, just the two of us. Maybe Bangkok, maybe the islands, maybe Vietnam, somewhere new, something that wasn't about her family or money or problems, just us. She looked at me like I'd said something crazy. I can't, she said. Why not? What? If something happens to my family? What if they need me? They have your number. We'd only be gone a few days, a week at most. She shook her head, firm, final. You don't understand. They depend on me. I can't just leave. I'm not asking you to leave forever, just a few days. No. That was it. No discussion, no compromise, just no. I realized then what was happening. I wasn't her boyfriend. I wasn't her partner. I was her ATM, a walking bank account that lived in Phuket and sent money whenever she needed it. And the worst part? I let it happen. I let it happen because I was afraid. Afraid that if I stopped sending money, she'd leave. Afraid that if I asked too many questions, she'd realize she could do better. Afraid that if I pushed back, I'd end up alone again. So I didn't say anything. I just kept sending money. And she kept taking it. 3 months in, Ratree told me about her dream. We were sitting by the pool. The sun was setting. Everything was golden. She had a notebook in her lap, sketches, numbers, plans. I'd seen her working on it for weeks, but she'd never shown me. "What's that?" I asked. She hesitated, looked at me with those big eyes, then handed it to me. "It's something I've been thinking about," she said, "for a long time." I flipped through the pages, drawings of a small cafe, tables, chairs, a counter with a coffee machine, a chalkboard menu on the wall, floor plans, furniture layouts, color schemes, estimates for rent, equipment, staff, licenses. Everything was detailed, thoughtful, real. "I want to open a cafe in Chiang Mai," she said. Her voice was soft, almost embarrassed. "For my family. So my mother doesn't have to work in the fields anymore. So my brother and sister can have something stable, a future, something that's ours." It was a good plan, better than good. I could see she'd put real thought into this, real planning. This wasn't just a dream. This was a business plan. "This is beautiful," I said carefully. "But 80,000 is a lot of money." She nodded, looked down at her hands, twisted the ring on her finger. "I know. That's why it's just a dream. I'll never be able to afford it. Maybe in 10 years, maybe 20, if I save everything." "Where did you get the number? 80,000? "I talked to a contractor, to property owners, to suppliers. Everything is expensive. The rent, the equipment, the permits, the construction, it all adds up." I looked at the sketches again, saw the hope in every line, the future she was trying to build for people she loved. I thought about my retirement account, the money sitting in the bank, growing slowly, waiting for a future that felt empty and lonely. "What if I helped?" I said. Her head snapped up. "What?" "What if I invested in it? In you? In this?" She stared at me. "Philip, no, I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking, I'm offering." She shook her head hard. "It's too much. You've already done so much, too much. I can't take any more from you." Reached across and took her hand, held it tight. "Listen to me. You're the only person who's made me feel like my life still matters. Like I'm not just some old man waiting to die. You make me feel alive. Let me do this. Let me invest in your future, in our future." She started crying, big tears rolling down her cheeks, grabbed my face with both hands, kissed me hard. "You're the only one who believes in me," she whispered against my lips. "The only one. Everyone else thinks I'm crazy, but you believe." "I do believe," I said, and I meant it. I believed in her, in the dream, in us. I transferred the money the next day, $80,000. Gone, just like that. A quarter of my retirement savings, my safety net, my backup plan, all of it wired to an account in Thailand, for a cafe that didn't exist yet, for a woman I'd known for 3 months. Ratree was ecstatic. She showed me the confirmation, hugged me, cried, called her mother, made plans to go to Chiang Mai to look at locations, to meet with contractors, to start making it real. I went with her a week later. We flew into Chiang Mai early in the morning. The air was cooler than Phuket, cleaner. The mountains rose up in the distance, green and misty. She took me to the area she'd picked, a busy street near the old city. Tourists, locals, tuk-tuks everywhere, lots of foot traffic, perfect for a cafe. She showed me the storefront. It was empty, dusty windows, peeling paint, a faded sign from whatever business used to be there. But I could see it. I could see what it could become. The tables by the windows, the smell of coffee, her mother behind the counter, her brother serving customers, her sister doing homework in the corner, a family business, something permanent, something good. "When do we start construction?" I asked. She hesitated, just for a second, but I noticed. "Soon. The contractor is finalizing the permits." "Can I meet him?" "He's very busy, but yes, soon." We went back a month later. I wanted to see the progress, to see my investment taking shape. But when we got there, the storefront was still empty. No equipment, No construction, nothing. The same dusty windows, the same peeling paint, like we'd never been there at all. "What's going on?" I asked. "The contractor had delays," she said quickly, not looking at me, looking at the empty storefront. "Permits take time here. It's Thailand. Everything is slow, corruption, bribes, it's complicated." "How long?" He said maybe 2 more months. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. But something felt off. Something felt wrong. "Can I talk to the contractor?" I asked. She looked uncomfortable, shifted her weight. "He doesn't speak English." "You can translate." She changed the subject, started talking about the menu, about hiring staff, about the grand opening, about how successful it would be, about how it would change everything for her family. But she never let me meet the contractor, never showed me the permits, never gave me a timeline, never gave me anything concrete, just promises, just words. I let it go. But at night, lying in the hotel bed, I'd do the math. $80,000, 4 months, nothing to show for it. I wanted to ask more questions, to push harder, to demand answers, but I was afraid of what I'd find, afraid that pushing would make her angry, would make her leave, would prove that I was just a fool. So I stayed quiet, smiled, nodded, pretended I believed, pretended everything was fine. But deep down I knew something was wrong. I just didn't want to admit it, not yet. 6 months in, I started noticing the calls, late at night, while I was asleep, or thought I was asleep. She'd slip out of bed, careful, quiet, trying not to wake me, go to the bathroom, stay there for 20 minutes, sometimes longer. I'd hear her voice through the door, soft, urgent, speaking Thai, fast, emotional, words I couldn't understand but could feel, the tone, the intimacy. When she came back to bed, I'd pretend to be asleep, keep my breathing steady, eyes closed. She'd lie down next to me, stare at the ceiling. I could feel the space between us, the distance, the secret. One morning, I found a man's shirt in the laundry. It wasn't mine, too small, different style, different brand, black with some logo I didn't recognize. "Whose is this?" I asked, holding it up. Ratree barely looked at it, just glanced, went back to her coffee. "My brother's. He stayed here last month, remember?" I didn't remember. I didn't remember her brother visiting at all. She'd never mentioned it, never told me he was coming. "He stayed here?" "Just one night. He had a job interview in Phuket. I told you." She said it like it was obvious, like I was being forgetful, like I was the one who was wrong. But I knew she'd never told me. I let it go. Didn't want to fight, didn't want to accuse, didn't want to be that jealous old man. But the thought stayed with me. A week later, I found a receipt in her purse. I wasn't looking for anything. I was just looking for a pen, needed to sign something. Opened her bag, saw it sitting there. A hotel in Patong, 2 nights, last week, when she'd told me she was visiting her family in Chiang Mai. "What's this?" I asked that night, holding up the receipt. My hand was shaking. She looked at it, then at me. Her face changed, defensive, angry. "What were you doing in my purse?" "Looking for a pen. Answer the question." She sighed, looked away. "It's nothing. I stayed there one night because I missed my flight. It says 2 nights. I needed to rest. The trip was exhausting. My mother was stressed. My grandmother was having a bad day. I just needed space. I wanted to believe her. I wanted it so badly. But I couldn't. Not anymore. Not with the late night calls. Not with the shirt. Not with the lies piling up. You told me you were in Chiang Mai. I was. This receipt is from Phuket. I came back early. Is that a crime? Why didn't you come here? To the villa? I told you I needed space, time to think. Is that not allowed?" She was good. She turned it around. Made me the bad guy. made me the suspicious one, the controlling one, the one who didn't trust. And I felt guilty, felt like maybe I was overreacting, maybe I was being paranoid, maybe this was all innocent. That night I waited until she was asleep. I took her phone from the nightstand. My hands were shaking, my heart was pounding. I knew I shouldn't, knew it was wrong, knew it was a violation. But I had to know, I had to see. I opened her messages, scrolled through, and then I saw it. A name, Anorak. Months of messages, hundreds of them. I opened the thread. My heart stopped. The messages were in Thai, but I could see the tone, the emojis, hearts, kisses, the intimacy, the love. I copied some of the text, pasted it into a translation app. The first message I translated made my stomach turn. I miss you, baby. When is the old man going to send more money? My hands were shaking. I kept scrolling, kept translating. He's so stupid. He believes everything I say. How much longer do we have to do this? Just a little longer. He has at least another 100,000, maybe more. After this, we're done. We can finally be together. I love you, only you. This is just business. I sat there in the dark, staring at the screen, feeling my entire world collapse. Everything I thought was real, everything I'd believed. It was all a lie, a con, a setup. She didn't love me. She never did. I was just a bank account, a pension, a retirement fund, a stupid old farang who believed a pretty girl could love him. I felt sick, dizzy, like the room was spinning. I wanted to wake her up, to scream, to throw the phone at her face, to demand answers. But I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything except sit there and read, message after message. Months of planning, months of lies, months of laughing at me behind my back. I confronted her the next morning. She was making coffee, humming to herself, happy, relaxed, like everything was fine. I put the phone on the counter, opened to the messages, pushed it toward her. Who is Anorak? I asked. My voice was cold, flat. She froze, looked at the phone, then at me. Her face went pale. It's not what you think. Who is he? He's just a friend. You told him you love him. You went through my phone? She grabbed it, looked at me like I'd betrayed her, like I was the one who'd done something wrong. How could you? That's my privacy. Answer the question. Who is he? He's no one. It doesn't mean anything. You're lying. She started crying, shaking her head, grabbing my arm. Philip, please. You're everything to me. He's just someone from before, from when I was young. It doesn't mean anything. I swear. You told him I'm stupid, that I believe everything you say. I was angry when I wrote that. It didn't mean anything. You told him you're waiting for me to send more money. I never said that. It's right here. I read it. I translated it. She pulled away, wiped her eyes. You don't understand, Thai. The translation is wrong. You're misunderstanding. I stared at her, at this woman I thought I knew, this woman I'd given everything to, and I didn't recognize her anymore. Get out, I said. Philip, get out. She didn't move. She stood there crying, begging, telling me I was wrong, that I didn't understand, that I was ruining everything. But I did understand. I understood everything now. I just didn't know what to do about it. She didn't leave. I told her to pack her things, to go, to leave me alone. But she refused. She cried for 2 days straight, didn't eat, didn't shower, just sat on the couch crying. Told me Anorak was just a friend, that the messages were taken out of context, that the translation was wrong, that I didn't understand Thai culture, that I was the one she loved, the one she wanted to be with, the only one. I wanted to kick her out, to change the locks, to never see her again. But I couldn't, because part of me still wanted to believe that I mattered, that I wasn't just a wallet, that somewhere in all of this there was something real. So I stayed quiet, stayed distant, let her cry, let her beg, and she stayed too. A week later, she came to me with papers, spreadsheets, numbers, printed out, official looking. She put them on the table in front of me. Her eyes were red, swollen, but there was something else there too, something calculating. "The cafe needs more money," she said quietly. I stared at her, couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything, after the lies, after Anorak, after I'd caught her, she was asking for more money. "What?" My voice was barely a whisper. "The contractor needs to be paid. The permits came through, but there are extra fees for the equipment, for the construction, for everything. It's more expensive than we thought." I laughed, a bitter, hollow laugh. "You're kidding." "I'm not." She pushed the papers closer. "It's 150,000. I know it's a lot, but this is the final amount. After this, we'll be done. The cafe will open. We'll start making money. I'll pay you back, I promise. Everything, every baht." "You told Anorak you're using me for money." She flinched. "That was a lie. I was trying to make him jealous. It didn't mean anything. He's your boyfriend." "He was my boyfriend. Past tense. It's over. You're the one I want. But we need this money. For the cafe. For our future." I looked at the numbers, looked at her. "I don't have it." She went pale. "What?" "I gave you 80,000 already, plus everything else. For your family, for your grandmother, for your brother, for your mother's roof. I don't have 150,000 left." She stared at me. "You have to. You have investments, savings, retirement accounts, something." I shook my head. "Not anymore. You took it all." Her face changed. The warmth disappeared. The softness, the desperation. It was like watching a mask fall off. "So that's it?" she said coldly. "You're just giving up?" "Giving up? Ratree, I gave you everything." "Not everything. What else do you want from me?" She stood up, walked to the bedroom, didn't answer. The next morning she was different, cold, distant. She barely looked at me, barely spoke. At night she slept in the guest room. When I tried to talk to her, she'd walk away, act like I wasn't there. The silent treatment, the punishment, the withdrawal of everything I'd been paying for. I lasted a week, 1 week of silence, of loneliness, of feeling like I was losing her. And then I broke. I went to my bank, talked to my financial advisor, liquidated my last investments, my emergency fund, my safety net, the money I'd promised myself I'd never touch. Everything. $150,000. I transferred it to her account. She smiled for the first time in days, came to me, kissed me, held me. "Thank you," she whispered. "This is it, I promise. After this, everything will be perfect. The cafe will open, we'll get married, we'll be happy. This is just the beginning." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. For 3 days she was warm again, loving, attentive. We had sex. She made my favorite food. She laughed. She held my hand. She called me baby. For 3 days, everything felt normal, like we were back at the beginning, like none of the bad stuff had happened. Then on the 4th day, I woke up and she was gone. Her suitcase, her clothes, her things, all of it, gone. The closet was empty. The bathroom was empty. The villa was silent. There was no note, no explanation, no goodbye, just a text message. Short, simple, final. "I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore." I called her 20 times, 30, 50. She didn't answer. I texted her, begged her to explain, to talk to me, to tell me what I did wrong. Nothing. I called her mother. The number was disconnected. I tried to find her on social media. She'd blocked me everywhere. Facebook, Instagram, Line, everything. I sat in the empty villa staring at my phone, my bank account, $400,000 gone, my retirement, my security, my future, all of it Gone. And so was she. I didn't leave the villa for a week. I couldn't. I just sat there, staring at the walls, at the pool, at the empty spaces where her things used to be, at the closet with nothing but my clothes, at the bathroom counter with only my toothbrush. I checked my bank account every day, hoping I'd made a mistake, hoping the numbers were wrong, hoping this was all some terrible nightmare and I'd wake up and everything would be fine. But they weren't wrong. $400,000, my entire retirement, everything I'd saved for 40 years, gone, vanished into Thai bank accounts I couldn't track, into a café that didn't exist, into the pockets of a woman who never loved me. I thought about calling the police, walking into the Phuket station, filing a report. But what would I say? That I gave money to my girlfriend and she left? That's not theft. That's not fraud. That's just stupidity. That's just an old man who believed a lie. I contacted a lawyer in Bangkok, found him online. He specialized in expat cases, foreigners getting scammed, foreigners losing everything. He'd seen it all before. I could tell from his voice on the phone. "Tell me what happened," he said. I told him everything. The meeting, the family, the money transfers, the cafe, the boyfriend, the messages, all of it. When I finished, there was a long silence. "How much did you send total?" he asked. 400,000 American dollars. Another silence, longer this time. "Without a contract, there's nothing you can do," he finally said. His voice was flat, professional, like he'd had this conversation 100 times before, like I was just another number, another stupid farang. "She didn't steal from you. You gave it to her willingly. Every transfer, you authorized it. You signed for it." "But she lied," I said. My voice cracked. "She manipulated me." "That's not illegal. Not in a way we can prove. You'd need evidence of fraud, forged documents, false identities, something concrete. But from what you're telling me, she was just a girlfriend who asked for money, and you gave it. So, I just lose everything?" He paused. I could hear him breathing, thinking. "Yes, I'm sorry. You're not the first. You won't be the last. This happens a lot, more than people think. Men come here, lonely, vulnerable, looking for something. And they find someone who knows exactly what they're looking for. And by the time they realize what's happening, it's too late. What should I do? Go home, start over, learn from it. And next time, if there is a next time, keep your money separate. Keep your heart separate. Don't mix them." I hung up, sat there in the silence. The villa felt huge, empty, cold. I thought about my ex-wife, how she'd warned me about moving too fast, about being careful, about not making rash decisions. I'd told her she was jealous, that she didn't want me to be happy. But she was right. She was trying to protect me. And I didn't listen. I thought about my kids, how they'd asked if I was sure about Thailand, about Ratree, about giving her money, how they'd said it seemed fast, seemed suspicious, seemed like a red flag. I'd brushed them off, told them I knew what I was doing, that they didn't understand, that this was real, that this was different. But they did understand. They understood better than I did. They saw what I couldn't see, what I didn't want to see, that I was just a lonely old man, desperate to feel wanted, desperate to feel young, desperate to feel like I mattered to someone. And Ratree saw that too, saw the loneliness, the need, the fear, the desperation, and she used it perfectly. She knew exactly what to say, exactly what to do, exactly how to make me believe. And I fell for it. Every word, every smile, every touch, every tear. I wasn't her partner. I was her pension, a retirement plan for a 24-year-old girl who knew exactly what she was doing, who'd probably done it before, who'd probably do it again. And I let her. I let her because I wanted to believe. because believing felt better than being alone, because being used felt better than being ignored, because paying for love felt better than having no love at all. And now I had nothing. No money, no dignity, no future, just an empty villa in a foreign country and a broken man staring at his reflection in the mirror. I booked a flight back to Australia. One way, economy, the cheapest seat I could find. It was all I could afford now. I had no savings left, no emergency fund, no investments, no backup plan. I'd have to sell my house in Brisbane, the one I'd already sold once and bought back with what little I had left. Move in with my daughter, sleep on her couch, start over at 62. I packed my things, one suitcase, just like Ratree. Everything I owned fit into one bag now. A few clothes, some toiletries, my laptop, my phone, nothing else. The villa would be emptied by the rental company. They'd keep my deposit. I didn't care. Before I left, I had one more thing to do. I had to see it, had to know for sure. I drove to Chiang Mai one last time, 6 hours, through mountains, through villages, through everything. My hands shook on the steering wheel the entire way. I found the address Ratree gave me for the café, the place where we were supposed to build her dream, my investment, our future, the family business that would change everything. I pulled up to the location, parked across the street. My heart was pounding, my mouth was dry, and there it was. Not a cafe, not an empty storefront, not a construction site, a karaoke bar, neon lights, Thai script, big bright letters, music thumping from inside even in the afternoon, people going in and out. It had been there for years, I could tell. The paint was faded. The sign was old. There was a picture on the door, a photo of the grand opening. I got out of the car, walked closer, looked at the date on the photo. 5 years ago. 5 years. There was never a cafe, never a dream, never a business plan, never a contractor, never any permits. Just a story, a lie, a con. Something she told every lonely Farang who walked into her life with money and hope and a desperate need to believe. I stood there for a long time, staring at the building, feeling the weight of my stupidity, feeling the shame, the embarrassment, the rage, but mostly feeling nothing, just empty, hollow, used up. Then I got back in the car and drove away. The flight back was long, 15 hours. I stared out the window the whole time, watched Thailand disappear below the clouds, the land, the ocean, everything. I kept thinking about Ratree, about the girl I thought I knew, the girl who laughed at my jokes, who held my hand on the beach, who kissed me under the stars, who cried when I sent money to save her grandmother, who made me feel alive for the first time in years. Was any of it real? Or was I just a mark from the beginning? Did she ever feel anything for me? Or was every smile calculated, every touch planned, every tear rehearsed? I don't know. Maybe I'll never know. Maybe it doesn't matter, but what I do know is this. I didn't lose $400,000 because Ratree was a liar. I lost it because I was so afraid of being alone that I paid someone to pretend to love me. I ignored every red flag, every warning sign, every moment of doubt, every piece of evidence that screamed at me to stop, to think, to be careful. Because admitting the truth meant admitting I was a fool, and I wasn't ready for that. But I'm ready now. I'm 62 years old, broke, starting over, living with my daughter in a spare bedroom of a house I used to own, sleeping in a bed that's too small, eating dinners I didn't pay for, watching my grandson play with toys I can't afford to buy him. My daughter doesn't say much. She's kind, patient, but I can see it in her eyes. The disappointment, the "I told you so" she's too polite to say out loud. But I'm awake. I see clearly now. I see the man I became. The man who was so desperate to feel young that he let a stranger take everything. The man who confused being needed with being loved. The man who thought he could buy happiness, buy companionship, buy a future. I don't hate Ratree. That's the strange part. I should. I should hate her for what she did, for the lies, for the manipulation, for the coldness. But I don't. I'm angry. Sure. But mostly I'm angry at myself. She didn't force me to send the money. She didn't hold a gun to my head. She didn't hack my bank account. I chose to send it. Over and over, even when I knew something was wrong, even when the evidence piled up, even when my gut screamed at me to stop. I chose to believe. I chose to hope. I chose to stay blind. And that's on me, nobody else. I survived this. Barely. But I survived. I'm still breathing, still here, still alive. And I'll never be that man again. The man who needed validation so badly he'd pay any price for it. The man who confused loneliness with love. The man who thought age didn't matter when money did. I don't know what comes next. I don't know if I'll ever trust anyone again. I don't know if I'll ever feel young again. But I know I'll face it with my eyes open. No more lies, no more illusions, no more desperate hopes. Just the truth. However ugly it is, however painful, however lonely, that's all I have left now. The truth. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that has to be enough because it's all I've got.